My stepfather, Arthur, slipped something into my espresso when he thought I was distracted. A little pick-me-up from my favorite future engineer, he said with a tight smile. I thanked him and quietly switched cups with his business partner, Robert, who never missed a chance to belittle my life's work. 40 minutes later. My name is David Chen, 29 years old, a master luthier and restorer of antique stringed instruments. My workshop is in Savannah, Georgia. I've built my reputation on patience and an ear for the soul of wood, rebuilding a shattered Stradivarius cello, voicing a new top for a 19th century guitar. This is the work that sustains me. But to my soon-to-be in-laws, particularly Arthur, what I do is a quaint distraction. "How's the woodworking hobby?" Robert would boom, clapping me on the back with condescending force. He was a commercial real estate developer, a man who measured value in concrete and square footage. Every Friday night, dinner at their penthouse was a ritual. Arthur would hold court over plates of sous vide steak, while Robert needled me about my unsustainable business model. My fiancée, Sophia, would press her knee against mine under the glass table, a silent signal of solidarity. I had just returned from a week-long consultation at the Boston Symphony, where I'd painstakingly restored the finish on a priceless viola da gamba. I was running on fumes, but Sophia was adamant we attend her stepfather's investor soiree. "Just make an appearance," she pleaded. I should have heeded the chill that went down my spine when Arthur isolated me near the wet bar, the way his eyes flicked toward the hallway before he handed me that demi-toss, the unnatural stillness in his fingers as he said, "I had this imported just for you." The air felt wrong. I just didn't grasp how profoundly it was about to sour. Sophia and I met 4 years ago at a silent film festival where I was providing live musical accompaniment on a restored harpsichord. She was a curator at a modern art museum, and we fell into a deep conversation about the intersection of craftsmanship and art. Her family, however, was a different composition altogether. From our first introduction, Arthur made it clear he had envisioned a corporate lawyer or a hedge fund manager for his only stepdaughter, someone who understood leverage and portfolios, not spruce and maple. Robert was cruder. He'd examine my hands and ask if I'd considered a real job with health insurance. For years, I endeavored to earn their approval. I gifted them rare vintage port, secured them tickets to impossible-to-get gallery openings, and casually mentioned my client list, which included world-renowned musicians and institutions. It never altered their core belief that I was an interesting but ultimately temporary accessory in Sophia's life.
Last Thanksgiving, I overheard Arthur on the balcony. Sophia could have been with Daniel, you know, architect, firm's doing the new sports arena, but she picks the craftsman. The way he said craftsman made it sound like street sweeper. Robert was more blunt. When we announced our engagement, he took me aside. "A wedding is a significant financial undertaking, son. Perhaps secure a line of credit before making such sentimental promises." I shielded Sophia from most of this. She loved Arthur, her mother's second husband who had been around since she was 10, and I didn't want to be the source of a rift. So I nodded, shook Robert's meaty hand, complimented the caterer's canapes, and swallowed my pride. But the red flags were there. The way Arthur would steer Sophia into conversations about stock options whenever I discussed a new acquisition for my workshop. How I was consistently cropped out of family photos posted online. The time Robert joked about having me investigated to ensure his little girl was in good hands. I dismissed it all, believing my consistency would eventually wear down their prejudice. I was mistaken. The night of the investor party, I returned from Boston with a crick in my neck from hunching over the excrement and the satisfying weight of a finalized contract in my email. I was exhausted, but changed into a suit and accompanied Sophia to their glittering high-rise. The party was in full swing. Arthur was holding forth on market trends. Robert was holding a cigar. Sophia's mother, Eleanor, flitted between guests. Sophia's half-brother, Felix, and his husband, Matteo, were engaged in a heated debate about film in the corner. After the main presentations, Arthur announced he was serving a rare small batch espresso. He vanished into the kitchenette, and I offered to help distribute the cups. That's when I witnessed it. He had 2 cups set apart. As I entered, he swiftly poured a few drops from a tiny, unlabeled bottle into one of them. It wasn't cream or sugar, it was clear, and he pocketed the bottle the instant he sensed my presence. "David, perfect timing," he said, his voice a notch too high. "This one's for you, a special roast for the artist." My pulse quickened. The liquid in the cup he offered me had a faint, oily sheen. "I'd like to help you with those," I said, taking both prepared cups from the counter. In the living room, Robert was bragging about a new property acquisition, not looking up as I approached. "Espresso, sir?" I placed the doctored cup in front of him, keeping the other for myself but not drinking it, claiming I'd had too much caffeine already. 40 minutes later, Robert was ashen, stumbling, and locking himself in a bathroom, the sounds of his distress unmistakable. Eleanor was flustered. Arthur's face went slack with dawning horror when he realized what had transpired. His eyes locked with mine across the room, and in that silent exchange, two truths became undeniable. My stepfather had tried to drug me, and he was aware that I knew. I didn't flinch. I didn't accuse. I simply swirled the untouched espresso in my cup while Sophia rushed to see if Robert needed help. In the ensuing chaos, Robert blaming the oysters, Arthur stammering about a bad batch of beans, I discreetly secured the cup meant for me. Something had recalibrated within me. My fury wasn't hot. It was glacial and precise. I wouldn't let this stand, but I wouldn't engage in their kind of war. I would hold up a mirror and force them to gaze at their own reflection. The following Tuesday, I took the cup to Lena, a former client who ran a private biomedical analysis lab. "Personal or professional?" she asked. "A petty family matter," I replied. 2 days later, she called. "David, that cup contained a high concentration of a sedative, zolpidem. Not deadly, but enough to cause significant disorientation, drowsiness, and amnesia. Where on earth did you get this?" I thanked her and requested a formal report. I didn't provide an answer. That evening, I told Sophia I needed a break from the Friday dinners, citing a complex violin restoration with a tight deadline. She was understanding, but sad. I didn't reveal the lab results. Not yet. I needed a fuller picture. Over the next 10 days, I conducted quiet research. Arthur had obtained prescriptions for sleep aids from 4 different doctors under various pretenses. There were also whispers about him in his business circles, erratic behavior at a closing, accusations of pressuring a junior partner into a bad deal, stories that had been settled quietly with non-disclosure agreements. I assembled the dossier and waited for the right moment. It arrived when Sophia mentioned her mother wanted professional photos of their penthouse for an Architectural Digest feature. "She specifically requested you," she said, surprised. I agreed. The next Thursday, I arrived at their penthouse alone with my camera bag and a sealed manila envelope. Eleanor was there, impeccably dressed. "Arthur is at the club," she explained. "Before we begin," I said calmly, "I think you should review this." I handed her the envelope containing the toxicology report and the evidence of Arthur's doctor shopping. Her hands shook as she read. "This is insane," she whispered. "He would never—" "We both know he did. What I don't comprehend is why." Her face contorted into a mask of defensive scorn. "You're an anchor around Sophia's neck. A man builds a legacy. He doesn't whittle it. She needs stability, not a man who plays with old toys." "And drugging her fiancé provides stability?" I kept my voice low and even. "It was just supposed to make you seem unstable," she hissed. "Make you miss your own exhibition opening next week. Make her see you're flaky, unreliable." I let the vile strategy hang in the air between us. "Here is what will happen now," I stated. "You will tell Arthur that I know. Then you will both treat me with civility and respect. Not because you've had a change of heart, but because the alternative is Sophia discovering the true character of her parents." Eleanor laughed, a brittle, empty sound. "She'll never believe you over us." I lifted my camera bag. "Perhaps not.
but she'll believe a certified lab report, prescription records from 4 physicians, and the sworn testimonies of business associates you've strong-armed. Are you willing to wager your relationship with your daughter on that? I left without taking a single photograph. That night, Eleanor called Sophia, sobbing, claiming I'd been aggressive and made wild, unsubstantiated accusations during our meeting. When Sophia confronted me, I could no longer conceal the truth. I showed her everything: the report, the prescriptions, the compiled evidence. My stepfather wouldn't, my mother wouldn't, she repeated, but her voice was thin, the conviction bleeding out of it. The next day, she confronted her parents. I wasn't present, but when she returned home, her eyes were swollen. Arthur says it's a massive misunderstanding, that you're insecure and trying to alienate me from my family. I simply nodded. I had anticipated this. What do you think? She didn't answer, just retreated to her studio and closed the door. I had retaliated, but I seemed to have become the antagonist in their narrative, and they had successfully sown seeds of doubt in the one person whose faith I needed. For a week, Sophia was distant. She visited her parents alone, returning each time quieter and more conflicted. I buried myself in my workshop, the scent of varnish and old wood my only comfort. Then a parcel arrived for me. No return address. Inside was a single USB drive and a note. Thought you should see this. M. Mateo, Felix's husband. The drive contained video files from the penthouse's sophisticated security system. The timestamps were from the night of the party. There was Arthur at the wet bar, clearly adding something to a cup. There was me entering, taking the cups. There was Robert drinking from the tampered one. But there was more footage from after we'd left. Arthur and Eleanor arguing fiercely.
"You gave it to the wrong person, you idiot," Eleanor snarled. "This isn't the first time your solutions have backfired," Arthur shot back. I watched it repeatedly, the reality sinking in. This wasn't an isolated incident, it was a pattern, and Eleanor was fully complicit. The next file was from 2 days later. Arthur and Eleanor were discussing me. "He knows," Arthur said. "So what? It's his word against ours. Sophia will never choose him. And if she does, then she's not the daughter I raised." Her voice was ice. "Don't worry, I've already started talking to her about commitment issues, cold feet. By the time I'm done, she'll be calling off the wedding and believing it was her own decision." I closed my laptop, my hands unsteady. This was a calculated campaign to control Sophia's life, to excise anyone who didn't fit their blueprint. And they were experts. I called Mateo. "Why send this?" "Because they tried it with me," he said, his voice low. "When Felix and I got serious, they hired a private investigator to dig into my past, tried to convince Felix I was a gold digger. It nearly worked." "Does Felix know?" He idolizes Arthur. He thinks the sun rises and sets on that man. He dismissed it as my anxiety. I just couldn't stand by and watch them do it to you, too. The next day, I received a text from Arthur. "We need to talk, man to man, my office." I met him in his sterile corner office suite. He was behind his mahogany desk, nursing a tumbler of whiskey. "David, families are complex organisms. My wife, she is fiercely protective. Her methods can be unorthodox, but her intentions are for Sophia's ultimate good." "Drugging a person is unorthodox?" I asked. He waved a dismissive hand. "A mistake. She takes medication for her nerves, a simple mix-up. These things happen." "I have the security footage, Arthur." His demeanor shifted instantly, the paternal facade melting into cold corporate ruthlessness. "What is it you want? Money? A buyout? I always suspected you were after the family's resources." "I want you both to cease your interference." "Leave us alone. Stop trying to poison Sophia against me." Arthur leaned forward, a cruel smile playing on his lips. "You think you're the first? Ask Sophia about Daniel, the architect. Ask her why that relationship really ended. Took us 3 months to convince her he was more interested in her trust fund than her heart. She came back to us, crying. She always does. He leaned back, smug. History has a way of repeating itself, son. Driving home, I called Lacey, Sophia's best friend from college. I asked her about Daniel. "Oh God, that was horrible," she breathed. "He was crazy about her, but her parents, they've fabricated emails, made it look like he was seeing someone else. He tried to fight it, but they'd gotten inside her head. She was utterly broken." The pattern was now horrifically clear. This was their modus operandi.
I didn't confront Sophia immediately. Instead, I became an archivist of their misdeeds. I tracked down Daniel, who was initially wary, but upon hearing my story, provided old text logs and emails showing the meticulous sabotage. I found other exes, old friends who'd been pushed out. Mateo provided more footage showing Arthur and Eleanor plotting over breakfast. "Once she's single again," Arthur said in one clip, "we'll bring her into the corporate board, introduce her to suitable partners from good families." I compiled it all onto a single drive. Then I invited Felix and Mateo for dinner, without telling Sophia. Over dessert, I connected my laptop to the television. "There's something you both need to see." For the next hour, we watched the evidence unfold. Sophia sat in stunned silence, tears tracking silently down her cheeks. Felix kept muttering, "This is edited. This is taken out of context." When it ended, Sophia turned to me, her voice a raw whisper. "Why didn't you show me this before?" "Because you needed to see the full scope. Not just what they did to me, but what they've done to you for years." Felix stood up, enraged. "This is a lie. My parents aren't capable of this." Mateo placed a hand on his arm. "They are, Felix. They did it to us. Why do you think they suddenly accepted me after my startup got that major funding round? It wasn't me they accepted. It was my balance sheet." Felix's face lost all its color. "You never said." "I tried," Mateo whispered. "You wouldn't hear it." Later that night, Sophia came to bed. "I need time," she said, her voice small. "But I believe you. And I am so sorry I ever doubted you." The next morning, Eleanor called. Sophia put her on speaker. "Darling, your father and I were thinking you should come stay with us for a few days. This engagement stress is clearly taking a toll. Some distance might provide clarity." "Mother," Sophia interrupted, her voice steady, "I've seen the videos." Silence. Then, "What videos, sweetheart?" "The security footage of Arthur drugging David's drink, of you both planning to destroy my relationship." Another pause. "Sophia, whatever he's shown you has been fabricated. You know how insecure David is about his place in our family." "Stop," Sophia said, her voice firm. "We're all coming over tonight. Felix, Mateo, David, and me. We're discussing this. No more lies." After she hung up, Sophia looked at me. "They'll deny it all. They'll try to make you the villain." "I know. So what's our move?" For the first time in weeks, I felt a grim smile form. I think it's time they met the man I really am. Not just the restorer, but the one who uncovers the truth hidden under the ruined finish.
That evening, we arrived at the penthouse. I brought a high-quality digital recorder. Felix and Mateo were already there, their postures rigid. Arthur attempted to take command. "I understand there's been some confusion." "No confusion," I said, placing the recorder on the coffee table and pressing record. "I'm ensuring we have an accurate record of this conversation. For clarity." Eleanor objected violently. "This is a private matter." "It's a family matter," I corrected. "And I am family.
despite your relentless efforts to prevent it. For 2 hours, we laid bare the entire sordid history, the drugging, the manipulation of Daniel, the systemic control. Arthur and Eleanor denied, deflected, and attacked. But with each denial, I played another audio clip, presented another document. Their defenses crumbled. Finally, Sophia stood. "I love you both, but what you've done is monstrous. You don't get to architect my life anymore." Felix, pale but resolute, added, "We make our own choices. You don't control us." Eleanor began to cry, not tears of remorse, but of sheer fury at her lost dominion. Arthur just looked shocked, as if his own algorithms had failed for the first time. As we prepared to leave, I handed Arthur the USB drive. "This is everything. The footage, the emails, the statements. It's yours." "What's this, a threat?" he asked, his voice hollow. "It's a choice," I said. "I will not publicly destroy you. That would hurt Sophia, and I will never do that. But if you ever attempt to interfere in our lives again, if you ever try to manipulate Sophia or speak a single word against me, copies of this will be sent to every member of your board, every investor in your fund, and every name on your precious charity gala list." For the first time, Arthur looked at me not with disdain, but with a grudging, cold assessment. "You miscalculated me." "Yes," I said, simply. "You did." 6 months passed. Sophia and Felix began seeing a therapist to untangle the years of manipulation. Arthur and Eleanor maintained a frosty distance, sending occasional formal invitations that we declined. Then, as the holidays approached, a formal dinner invitation arrived. "A gesture of reconciliation," the card read. Sophia wanted to go. "They're still my family. They're trying." I agreed, but I held no illusions. The dinner was a masterpiece of superficial normalcy. Eleanor had outdone herself. Arthur was cordial, asking about my work with feigned interest. After dessert, he gestured me into his study. "He have a proposal," he said, pouring 2 cognacs. "Your workshop. It's charming, but have you considered scaling? I could make an introduction to a venture capital group. We could franchise the concept. Chen Artisan Restorations. The valuation could be significant." I took the sniffer, but didn't drink. "Why would you do that?" "For the family," he said smoothly. "And I respect your resolute. You protected my daughter's interests while defending your own. That's a valuable skill set." I set the glass down. "The offer is declined." His smile tightened. "David, be pragmatic. This is a bridge." "No," I repeated. "It's another form of control. You can't acquire me, Arthur. You can't stand that Sophia loves me precisely because I exist outside your spreadsheets." "Don't be a fool," he hissed, the mask vanishing. "Everyone can be incentivized." I stood. "That is your fundamental error. It's also why you will never understand your daughter." I returned to the dining room where Eleanor was showing Sophia childhood photo albums. "Look how happy you were," she was cooing, "when your life was simpler." Sophia caught my eye. She read my expression and stood. "Mom, Arthur, we have news." The room fell silent. "We're expecting. I'm 4 months pregnant." The shock on their faces was unfeigned. Eleanor recovered first, embracing Sophia with theatrical tears. Arthur approached slowly, his eyes darting between Sophia and me. "Congratulations," he said stiffly. "Thank you," I replied, then stepped closer, my voice for him alone. "This child will never be an asset in your portfolio. I will make certain of it." His jaw clenched, but he gave a single sharp nod. The message was received. As we drove home, Sophia took my hand. "They'll never truly change, will they?" "No," I said, "but they will have to accept that we have." 3 weeks later, a package arrived from Arthur's lawyer. Inside were the signed deeds to my workshop building, which I had been leasing, and the legal paperwork establishing an irrevocable trust for our unborn child. There was no covering letter, no conditions. It wasn't an apology. It was a surrender. A corporate acquisition of a problem they finally understood they could not solve. Our son was born in the spring. We named him Leo. When Arthur and Eleanor visited the hospital, they brought extravagant gifts, but kept a formal distance. They admired the baby, took pictures, and departed without a single piece of unsolicited advice. Months drifted into a new, quieter rhythm. They never apologized, but the campaign of sabotage ended. One evening, as I was applying a final coat of varnish to a repaired mandolin, Sophia came into the workshop carrying Leo. "My mother called. They want us to come for New Year's Eve." I looked up from my work. "What do you want to do?" "I think we should go," she replied, "but on our terms. We leave by 10, no discussions about business or the future." I nodded. That seems wise. She sat beside me, rocking our son. "You know, I used to think strength was about building a life they would approve of. Now," she looked down at Leo, then back at the instrument taking shape under my hands, "now I know it's about building something true, something beautiful that can't be bought or sold." A week before New Year's, a large, heavy envelope arrived from Arthur's lawyer. Inside was the annual report for his flagship property development group. The cover and the entire interior were featuring stunning artistic photographs of the historic buildings his firm had restored and adapted. My photographs, work I had done on my own time for my own pleasure. Paper-clipped to the front page was a single business card. On the back, in Arthur's precise handwriting, was written, "Hired the best man for the job. A." It wasn't affection. It was a statement of fact, an acknowledgement of a worth he could finally, grudgingly measure. I didn't call to thank him. Some currencies aren't traded with words. That summer, I expanded my workshop into a small gallery showcasing both my restorations and my photography. At the opening, Sophia stood by my side with Leo in a carrier. My mentors and clients from the music world mingled with art collectors. Arthur and Eleanor made a brief, admittedly impressive, appearance. Arthur shook my hand, gave a curt, approving nod at the displayed work, and left without offering a single note on marketability. As we closed up that night, Sophia asked, "Do you think they've finally changed?" I pondered the question, looking at the peaceful face of our sleeping son. I said, "No. But they have learned that some things cannot be broken, and some tones cannot be bought. And for now, that is enough."